You mentioned that you thought the students needed to be understood and challenged. That's an interesting juxtaposition. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why you think they needed to be understood, but then how did you challenge them?
Well, look, there were, I mean, I stayed, of course, for the whole ceremony. And I would say about, you've got about 800, 900 graduating students there from all over the world. I'd say a solid 20% of them were wearing keffiyeh, right, in solidarity with the Palestinian cause, uh, carrying a Palestinian flag onto the stage and displaying it, and or with a fake diploma that called for divestment from Colombia into Israel, which they handed to the dean onto the podium. So, I mean, let's be clear. You had a lot of students there that were active and wanted to use this commencement to display their feelings on this issue. And I needed those students to know that I heard them, right? That I was not going to ignore them and that I was going to engage with them. I had to do that. But at the same time, that does not mean simply sitting and saying, okay, okay, I hear you, and now we're going to move on. It is, what do I think? Because, I'm part of the SEPA community too, the Columbia community, and they need to hear my honest views. I don't know, I mean, if you saw the speech, that I talked about the fact that, they're all going on to their jobs and internships and fellowships and summer travel. And meanwhile, the hostages are still being held and the Palestinians in Gaza are still facing death. And both of those things are still happening. And they need to be challenged on all of that, right? It's not like we're in this microcosm in Colombia and they fight, then they go on to the real world. It's like, okay, well, what's happening here, right? So I felt like it was really important that I showed respect to them, but then they had to actually be willing to listen and engage with me. And there were some moments at the beginning of the speech. I heard some chanting, I heard some shouting, and I said, listen, I hear you, I'm with you, I'm getting there. Give it a moment. And God bless these guys. I give them a lot of respect. They did. They were willing to listen, and not one person. Not only was there not a mass walkout, not one Columbia student left. Not one. Not one Columbia student turned their back during the speech. And at the end of the speech, I'm sure a lot of them didn't agree with everything I had to say. They all applauded. And I felt them change their minds, listen over the course of the speech. I heard from many of my students who wrote me the same thing. And I felt it, for me, it was inspiration to actually be able to be a part of that in a constructive way, in an engaged way, not in an oppositional way, which is so much of the way this has been covered in the news over the past 2 months, and is absolutely not doing any favors, not doing any service to democracy, to the students, or to the politicians on the far left and on the far right who are just using these students to make bank for themselves.